October 2022-11. 1a. Briefly describe the main themes in each passage. 4. ANS, A. 1. Surah 6:75-79. Theme of this long verse of a Medinian surah, Al-Baqarah, is Tawhid. It outlines Allah's inimitable attributes that distinguish him from his creatures. The words Al-Hayyu Al-Qayyum, the ever-living and self-subsisting, refer to his creative and sustaining force behind his existence. Allah is free from human weaknesses and needs such as tiredness or sleep. His authority encompasses the entire universe, and he remains totally uninfluenced in establishing his writ over his created world. The word kursi signifies both his authority and knowledge about all his domain because he is its sole creator. Therefore, none of his creations can escape his knowledge in the remotest parts of the universe. It further emphasizes Allah's unique right of exercising his authority in a way that none can dare influence him. The passage ends with the words Huwa al-Aliyyu al-Azim that represent his ultimate supremacy and exaltedness. The Quran repetitively mentions Allah's supreme status, such as, Allah exalted, the true King, the Lord of the Throne of Grace. 23:116, Al-Mu'minun. 1a. 2. Surah 5.110. The main theme is Allah's messengers. Candidates will develop these themes in their own way, e.g. guidance, God's assistance and guidance to his prophets. In this case Jesus was helped by the Holy Spirit, the book and the wisdom, the law and the gospel power. Jesus did great things but only with God's permission, by my leave. Support. God supports prophets in their mission by giving them miracles. Protection. God provides protection to his chosen people. Challenges. Prophets face opposition and persecution. In this case Jesus was rejected with claims of magic. 1a. 3. Surah 114. The main theme is Allah's relationship with the created world. Candidates will develop these themes in their own way, e.g. sovereignty. God establishes himself as Master, Rab, King, Malik, and true God, Ilah. God's refuge, only he can help in times of need, in this case from jinn and humans. Seek help only from him. Control, he created everything so controls everything, even mischief makers. Warning, it's a warning of those who whisper evil bad ideas to humans, and then disappear and leave them on their own protection. God is a protector from jinn and humankind. B. 1b. Briefly explain the importance of these themes in a Muslim's life today. Use the AO2 levels of response. 4. 1b. Surah 6.75-79. The importance is that it creates a strong link with God and strengthens belief in his oneness, so Muslims should not look up to anyone else to help them in their lives and solve their problems. It shows Muslims how God guided his messengers, in this case Ibrahim. Humans should use their minds to ponder upon God and look up to God for guidance. God's signs invite Muslims to observe their environment. It creates awe and wonder to help get closer to him. It reminds humankind that he is the creator of all things, and this realization helps them turn to him at all times. 1b. 2. Surah 5.110. These teachings reaffirm for Muslims the prophethood of Jesus and the power of God. The teachings show humans are capable of great feats, but it is God who gives permission, strength and assistance for these, whether it is moon landings, space travel, etc. Muslims should use these as signs of God's grace, and believe in his power to control everything and allow things to happen. They should therefore remember him often, by praying, supplicating or doing good deeds, etc. to ensure they are counted as believers. 1b. 3. Surah 114. Through these verses Muslims get to know the kind of evil's mischief they have to be wary of, e.g. jinn, humans or internal whisperings such as jealousy. This means they should be aware of what's happening to them so they can recognize the signs of mischief and temptations. Praying and doing good deeds strengthens reliance on God. Reciting this surah with the other calls is a source of protection. God is the King, so it is him who people should seek refuge with. 2a. Write about how God describes himself so humans can know him using 1. Surah 2.255, Ayat al-Kursi. 2. Surah 112, Ikhlas. B. How can Muslims use the verses from Part A to connect to God in their everyday lives? A. Surah 2.255, Ayat al-Kursi. This long passage describes Tawhid by referring to those attributes of Allah that distinguish Him from His creatures. It begins with the fundamental expression of Tawhid by negating all other objects that misguided humans have been adoring. The words Al-Hayyu Al-Qayyum, the ever-living and self-subsisting, refer to His creative and sustaining force behind His existence. Allah is free from human weaknesses and needs such as tiredness or sleep. It is not tiring for Him to regulate and maintain this huge universe. His authority encompasses every part of His created world. He remains totally uninfluenced in establishing His writ over His domain. The word Kursi signifies both His authority and knowledge about this immense universe because He is its sole creator. That is why this passage is called Ayat al-Kursi, verse of the throne. This means none of His creatures can escape His knowledge in the remotest parts of the universe. Various Quranic verses remind humans this supreme attribute of Allah, and your Lord is most knowing of whoever is in the heavens and the earth. 17 hours 84 minutes, Al-Isra. It further emphasizes Allah's unique right of exercising His authority in a way that none can dare influence Him. The passage further emphasizes the inability of human mind and intellect to have access to even the slightest portion of His knowledge unless He Himself grants them whatever He wishes. The passage ends with the words Huwal Aliyu al-Azim that represent His ultimate supremacy and exaltedness. The Quran frequently mentions Allah's supreme status, such as, Allah be exalted, the true King, the Lord of the throne of grace. 23:116, Al-Mu'minun. Surah 112, Ikhlas. This early Makkan surah sums up the absolute oneness of Allah by referring to His uniqueness in person, Tawhid fil Zat. The commanding word Qul say highlights the importance of the message that follows the command. Allah's name Al-Ahad summarizes His absolute oneness. His perfection and His sublime nature are expressed in the word Al-Samad that has diverse meanings. It implies His eternal existence that keeps Him free from the limitations of time and space. It also means He cannot be dependent on anyone, whereas all of His creatures have to turn towards Him for their needs. Similarly, He is the ultimate source of refuge and protection against evil forces. Several Quranic verses reiterate this attribute of Allah, such as, "And we have provided therein means of subsistence for you, and for those whose sustenance you are not responsible." 15:20, Al-Hijr. The surah proceeds by rejecting the false belief of Allah having any ancestors or descendants. This elucidates Allah's unique person in order to highlight His superiority over all. Finally, it teaches Muslims of Allah's incomparability, as none of His creatures are capable of finding any entity resembling Him. At some places the Quran compares Allah with light in order to remind humans their limitations regarding this. For example, at one place it says, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. 2400 hours 35, Al-Nur. The surah is so named as it purifies faith in oneness of Allah. Due to its conciseness, the Prophet declared, "By Him in whose hand my life is, it is equal to 1/3 of the Quran." B. The two passages are among the most frequently recited portions of the Quran. 3a. Write about the persecution faced by the Prophet, after he started preaching Islam openly. The surah proceeds by rejecting the false belief of Allah having any ancestors or descendants. This elucidates Allah's unique person in order to highlight His superiority over all. Finally, it teaches Muslims of Allah's incomparability, as none of His creatures are capable of finding any entity resembling Him. At some places the Quran compares Allah with light in order to remind humans their limitations regarding this. For example, at one place it says, Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. 2400 hours 35, Al-Nur. The surah is so named as it purifies faith in oneness of Allah. Due to its conciseness, the Prophet declared, "By Him in whose hand my life is," it is equal to 1/3 of the Quran. B. The two passages are among the most frequently recited portions of the Quran. Generally, in Muslim families, children are encouraged to learn them by heart so that they can recite them in daily prayers. Their recitation after comprehending their meanings strengthens a Muslim's bond with Allah as they describe supreme powers and attributes of Allah. Ayatul Kursi is specially recited before going to bed or abroad. This is an expression of leaving one's life and assets in the protection of Allah. Moreover, recitation of al-Ikhlas makes a Muslim immune against any form or degree of shirk that is an unpardonable sin. Thus the two passages train Muslims to remember Allah. This, in itself, is the best source of attaining peace of mind as promised by the Quran. Verily, in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest. 1328, Al-Ra'd. 3a. Write about the persecution faced by the Prophet, Pu, after he started preaching Islam openly. B. Choose one example of the Prophet's conduct when persecuted and explain how it can be followed by Muslims today. A. The Holy Prophet initially preached secretly to his friends and relatives. Then he received Allah's command to preach openly. Accordingly, he addressed a huge crowd from the Safa hill. He was outrightly rejected by the Quraysh, and Abu Lahab cursed him for wasting the time of so many people. The Quraysh gradually began to target the Prophet openly and harshly. He was subjected to humiliation, torture, and disgrace. The Makkans asked his uncle, Abu Talib, to keep his nephew from preaching the new faith. Abu Talib conveyed this message to the Prophet, but he expressed his resolve to continue his mission against all odds. There are many stories about the ways the Prophet was persecuted in Makkah. Once, he was offering prayer in the Haram, when Abu Jahl said to other chiefs, "I wish someone could fetch the bowels of a camel with all the filthy mass and fling it over Muhammad." Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt quickly brought the garbage and flung it over the neck of the Prophet. Other pagans danced in glee, jostling and pushing one another. Someone informed Fatima, who was just 5 or 6 by then. She ran up to the Haram, removed the filth and rebuked Uqba and other insulters. On another occasion, when the Prophet was busy in offering prayer, Uqba roped his neck with a sheet of cloth and pulled at it. Abu Bakr happened to come in and he freed the Prophet from Uqba's grasp. Then he said to Uqba, "You kill a man who merely says that Allah is one." The pagans, in turn, pulled Abu Bakr by his hair and injured his head. He was given various insulting titles such as a magician, poet, and a man possessed by spirits. Whenever he addressed an audience in public, Abu Lahab would simultaneously interrupt his speech. Once, when the Prophet visited the fair of Dulmajaz and addressed the crowd by saying, "There is no God but Allah," Abu Jahl quickly threw dust over him and said, "Do not be misled, he wants you to give up worshipping Lat and Uzza." Allah, however, continually kept him reassuring by sending various revelations. For example, Surah 53 says, "Your fellow man is neither misguided nor astray, nor does he speaks of his own whims. It is only a revelation sent down to him." 53:2-4, Al-Najm. He was called Al-Abtar, man without progeny, on the death of his sons from Khadijah. Abu Lahab's wife, Jamil, used to throw garbage on him whenever he offered prayer at his house. She often spread thorny bushes in his way, before he would step out of his home. She also mocked him when there was an unusual delay in receiving revelation till Surah 93, Al-Duha, was revealed. Abu Lahab forced his sons, Utbah and Utaiba, to divorce the Prophet's daughters, Ruqayya and Kulthum. Leaders of the Quraysh had secret meetings several times to devise an effective strategy. In Leaders of the Quraysh had secret meetings several times to devise an effective strategy to dissuade the Prophet from preaching Islam. They decided to bribe the Prophet and sent Utbah bin Rabi'a as their Abu Lahab forced his sons, Utbah and Utbah, to divorce the Prophet's daughters, Ruqayya and Kulthum. Leaders of the Quraysh had secret meetings several times to devise an effective strategy to dissuade the Prophet from preaching Islam. They decided to bribe the Prophet and sent Utbah bin Rabi'a as their representative to him. He offered the Prophet fabulous wealth, chieftainship of Makkah and marriage with the most beautiful girl in Makkah. The Prophet rejected all offers, and Utbah went back in dismay. In 616 AD, the Quraysh decided to impose a general social boycott on Banu Hashim, Prophet's clan. Details of the boycott were written and hung on the gate of the Kaaba. Abu Talib took all his family, except Abu Lahab, to his abandoned property, Shurib-i-Abi Talib, Gorge of Abi Talib, for 3 years. At the end of the boycott in 619 AD, Prophet suffered great losses as he lost Hazrat Abu Talib and Hazrat Khadija. Both had died due to prolonged sufferings. The Prophet was so much aggrieved on this loss that he declared 619 AD as the year of sorrow. After this, the Prophet found it difficult to spread Islam in Makkah. So, he visited Taif in 620 AD and tried to preach to Bani Taqif of Taif, but these people proved even more hostile and the Prophet left the town with an injured body and a heavy heart. His difficulties would not end before his migration to Medina. Finally, the Makkans drafted a plan to kill him, about which he was informed by a revelation, and decided to migrate to Medina. B. Prophet stood firm against all opposition. Stood firm against all opposition to his mission. The Makkan chiefs tried to dissuade him from his mission by pressurizing Hazrat Abu Talib. The Prophet, on this occasion, said that he was preaching Allah's message and feared Allah more than whatever people might do to him. Muslims today need to keep in mind that pursuing a noble mission may invite opposition from various corners, but this should never discourage them, and they should believe in the Quranic promise, so, verily with every difficulty there is relief. 94:5, Al-Inshira, their opponents may try to bribe them in order to keep them from continuing their mission, but this too should not affect their determination. They should believe in their ultimate success as was demonstrated by the Prophet. 4a. Write an account of the first actions taken by the Prophet, to establish a Muslim community in Medina. b. How might Muslims today follow the example of the community in Medina to make their own communities stronger? A. The Holy Prophet stayed at Quba after migrating from Mecca. Then he reached Yathrib, that would now be renamed as Medina al-Nabi, City of the Prophet, or just Medina. He was warmly greeted by the people of Medina. He stayed in the house of Hazrat Abu Ayyub Ansari while the Prophet's mosque and his apartment were being constructed. After their construction, he organized the congregational prayers by introducing the adhan, though an exercise of ijma. He had decided to transform Medina into a republic with a central government under which all inhabitants were to be equal citizens. For this he drafted the Charter of Medina that declared all the people of Medina a single community regardless of their religious background. Thus he unified Muslims and non-Muslims under this constitution. He also had to unite the Muhajirin emigrants with the Ansar helpers. The Muhajirin had left all their assets in Mecca for the sake of Islam. Many of them happened to be quite rich, but they, too, had migrated secretly, leaving behind their homes and wealth. The Ansar were ready to accommodate them generously, but the Prophet knew that there should be some permanent arrangement for the migrants. They were accustomed to manual labor and self-reliance. When the construction of the Prophet's mosque was nearing completion, he summoned the two communities at the house of Hazrat Anas bin Malik. By then the total number of migrants was 45, as there were many already settled in Abyssinia since 615 AD. The Prophet said to the Ansar, "These, Muhajirin, are your brothers." Then he called one from the Muhajirin and one from the Ansar, and declared, "Each of you is a brother to the other." The Ansar took their brothers in faith to their homes, gathered all their stock and shared the whole equally. The Ansar mainly earned by cultivating their oases, but the Muhajirin were mainly traders and knew nothing about agriculture. So, it was decided that the Ansar would manage the whole business and give half the produce to the Muhajirin. Some of the major examples of this pairing include some of the very prominent companions. Abu Bakr with Kharija bin Zayd, Umar bin Khattab with Itban bin Malik, Uthman with Aus bin Thabit, Zubayr bin Alawam with Salama bin Waqsh, Salman Farsi with Abu Darda, Bilal with Abu Ruwayha, Abu Dar Ghafari with Mundir bin Amr, Amr bin Yasir with Hudayfa bin Yaman, and Muzaybi bin Umair with Abu Ayyub. The Prophet paired those who had common interests, skills, and had no major difference in their socio-economic status. Primarily, each Muhajir was to act as a teacher to his Ansari brother. Hazrat Abu Hudayfa was the son of a very powerful Makkan chief. He was, accordingly, paired with Hazrat Abad bin Bishr, the tribal chief of Ashhal. Hazrat Abu Ubaidah was gifted with military skills and ability to excel as a leader. He was made brother of Hazrat Sa'd bin Mu'ad, the chief of Aws tribe. Hazrat Abd Rahman bin Auf had inherited business skills. His bond was made with a rich Ansari, Hazrat Sa'd bin Rabi. He purchased some cheese and ghee, and retailed it all the day. In a short time, he had earned so much that he got married. Various other Muhajirin also began to prosper with time by setting up their businesses. Muhajirin were allotted vacant plots lying unused near the houses of the Ansar. Those Ansar who had no spare plots shared their houses with their brothers in faith. Hazrat Uthman, Miqdad and Ubaid got lands closer to the Ansar's houses. This brotherhood was treated as real kinship. On the death of an Ansari, his property was inherited by his Muhajir brother, and this tradition was based on the Quranic command, "They who believed in Allah and migrated and fought in the way of Allah with all their wealth and life, and those who gave them shelter and helped them, are brothers of each other." 8:10, Al-Anfal. However, after the Battle of Badr this practice was abandoned by another Quranic verse, "Those having blood relations are more entitled to each other's inheritance." 8 hours 75 minutes, Al-Anfal. Hazrat Ali was paired with the Prophet himself. However, it should be noted that with time the condition of the Muhajirin began to improve. B. These actions of the Prophet to build a Medinian community teach Muslims valuable lessons. The Marwakat was built on the foundation of common faith of Islam. This common faith erases all other identities, social, economic, racial, and geographical. It instructs Muslims to help fellow Muslims in need. Muslims are thus trained to develop the spirit of sacrifice and love for their brothers in faith. The Prophet instructed Muslims, "None of you truly believes unless he desires for his brother that what he desires for himself." The Pakistani Muslims accommodated their fellows migrating from India in 1947, and then Afghan Muslims coming to Pakistan 1979 onwards. Charter of Medina guides Muslims how to live with non-Muslims in a pleasant environment. Muslims migrating to a non-Muslim state should try to promote a culture of peaceful coexistence so that the genuine image of Islam is presented to their hosts. Such a sense prepares them to be concerned about the problems of others regardless of their religious identity. 5a. Write about the lives of the Prophet's uncles, Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib and Abu Talib. b. What can be learned from Abu Talib's example of support for the Prophet? A. Hazrat Hamza. He was the son of Abd Muttalib bin Hashim and Holla bin Tuhayb. Being only around 2 years older to the Prophet, he was his uncle as well as foster brother. His titles were Abu Umara and Abu Ya'la. Later, due to his boldness, the Prophet titled him as Lion of Allah and Lion of the Messenger of Allah. He did not show any interest in Islam when the Prophet preached to his kinsman in 613 AD. However, he did not oppose Islam. He embraced Islam a little later, in 615 AD. He was fond of hunting and wrestling. Once, while returning, he was told of the insult of the Prophet by Abu Jahl. He rushed to Abu Jahl, who was sitting in the Kaaba along with important elders. He struck him with his bow and said, "You have been abusing Muhammad. I too follow his religion and profess what he preaches. Hit me back if you can." Some of Abu Jahl's relatives tried to help him, but he told them, "Leave Abu Umara alone, for by Allah, I insulted his nephew deeply." Hazrat Hamza then proceeded to the house of Al-Arqam, where the Prophet had shifted to escape the notice of the Quraysh, and embraced Islam. His conversion raised the confidence of the oppressed Muslim community as they felt emboldened in his presence. In Medina, the Prophet gave him charge of one of the expeditions to raid the trade caravan of Abu Jahl at Juhayna on the coast of the Red Sea. The caravan, however, escaped Hazrat Hamza's raid. Hazrat Hamza participated in the Battle of Badr and shared a camel with Hazrat Zayd bin Haritha. He killed the prominent Makkan chief Utbba in the individual combat. Then he helped Hazrat Ali in killing Shayba, brother of Utbah. In the general fight, he killed many other pagans and proved his skills as an ardent fighter. He was honored to become the first flag-bearer of the Prophet in the expedition against the Jews of Banu Qaynuqa. He also fought valiantly in the Battle of Uhud. He stood in front of the Prophet, fighting with 2 swords and shouting, "I am Allah's lion." Before the battle, Hind bint Utbba, wife of Abu Sufyan, had pledged to avenge the deaths of her relatives. She hired a slave Washai bin Hob, known for his skills as a lancer. Washai killed Hazrat Hamza in the Battle of Uhud, 625 AD, and Hind expressed her hatred against him by chewing out his liver. This was called muthla, or mutilation of the dead body of the enemy, in the pre-Islamic Arabia. The Prophet buried Hazrat Hamza in the cemetery of Uhud in the same grave as his nephew Abdullah bin Jahsh. The Prophet later said, "I saw the angels washing Hamza because he was in paradise on that day." He was greatly aggrieved on Hazrat Hamza's death and gave him the title, Sayyid al-Shahada, leader of the martyrs. Washai embraced Islam on the conquest of Makkah as the Prophet had forgiven him. The Prophet, however, asked him not to sit in the front row of his audience as he would remind the Prophet of his beloved uncle. Hazrat Abu Talib. Hazrat Abu Talib was born in 535–540 AD as Imran or Abd Munaf to Hazrat Abd al-Muttalib. After the death of Hazrat Abd al-Muttalib, he became the chief of Banu Hashim, and took the offices of Sakaya and Rifada, serving water and food to pilgrims. Despite his relatively weak financial position, he was a well-respected man in Mecca. After the death of Abd al-Muttalib and the Prophet's mother, Hazrat Amna, he became guardian of the Prophet because the eldest uncle, al-Harith, was not that well off. He showered fatherly love on the Prophet, and it is acknowledged by the Quran, "Did he, Allah, not find you an orphan and give you shelter and care?" Surah 93, Al-Duha. In his youth, the Prophet used to tend to the flocks of Abu Talib. At the age of 12, the Prophet went on a trade journey with Abu Talib and met with Barira, the monk. At the time of Hazrat Khadija's proposal of marriage, the Prophet consulted with his uncle and, therefore, took the responsibility of young Ali bin Abu Talib to ease his father's burden. Hazrat Abbas, on the advice of the Prophet, took Hazrat Ja'far in his custody, leaving Hazrat Aqil with Abu Talib. He attended the feast of Du al-Ashira, hosted by the Prophet, along with his brothers Hamza, Abbas, Abu Lahab and Zubair. He assured his support for the Prophet despite Abu Lahab's strong opposition to Hazrat Muhammad. Abu Talib continued to support and protect his nephew even when the Quraysh became hostile towards him. Once he exclaimed to the Prophet, "Save me and yourself, and do not put a greater burden on me than I cannot bear." The Prophet replied, "O uncle, by Allah I swear, even if they put the sun in my right hand and the moon in my left, I shall not abandon my mission until Allah has vindicated it or caused me to perish in the process." Impressed by the strong determination of the Prophet, he strengthened his support for his prophetic mission. The Quraysh even tried to bribe Hazrat Abu Talib. They offered him to leave the Prophet and adopt Umara bin al-Walid bin al-Mughira, the most handsome youth in Mecca. He was also impressed by the Prophet's refusal to a set of attractive offers made by the Quraysh to him in order to keep him from spreading Islam. He had a strong poetic taste and is reported to have composed some of the earliest Naat's poetry in praise of the Prophet. Together with the Prophet and the other Muslims, he suffered the social and economic boycott imposed by the Quraysh from 616 to 619 AD. Hazrat Abu Talib died in 619 AD and was buried in the cemetery of Jannat al-Amula in Mecca. The year was observed as the year of grief by the Prophet, who was deeply grieved at the loss of his uncle and the beloved wife Hazrat Khadija. The Prophet became more vulnerable before his Makkan enemies as he had lost tribal protection after Abu Talib's death. According to the Sunni sources, he did not formally embrace Islam, though the Shi'a Muslims have totally different views about this issue. B. Abu Talib continued to support the Prophet in his mission unconditionally since he had adopted the Prophet as an orphan child. He faced many difficulties in doing so, but he remained firm and steadfast. This teaches Muslims to fulfill their commitment regarding their relatives and friends even though they might pay heavy price for this. They should remain loyal to their unsupported family members with a strong belief in Allah's help after testing times. They should keep in mind this Quranic promise, "O believers, seek the help of patience and prayer. Allah is truly with those who observe patience." 2:153, Al-Baqarah. Abu Talib remained uninfluenced when the pagans tried to bribe the Prophet through him. Muslims today should prefer moral achievements instead of being tempted by the worldly attractions when they have decided to stand by those they love and care for.